So that completes our journey for this update to the regulations. There are still some unknowns regarding the implementation of zero carbon homes in 2016 and how allowable solutions will be fully implemented. But hopefully you now have a better idea of the route ahead. Any questions? Stunned you all into silence.
Is it likely that non-domestic buildings will be next to this kind of stuff?
As far as I know, the zero carbon homes or zero carbon policy for non-domestic buildings is scheduled for 2019. That's the dates that I have in my head. But nothing's been published on that yet.
Is it going to be as onerous?
Well, I suspect it will follow I imagine it's probably going to follow a similar process where there will be this enhanced minimum standard and then a gap that needs to be filled with something else. So I don't know any more detail on that at this stage.
Seems to be they're pushing more towards building control, to my mind. Does that mean there's going to be any effect on your fees at all?
It shouldn't do, because obviously what they're doing is pushing building control to be the checkers of the technical standards, and the planners will be the implementation of the policy. So where a policy is applied and there's an enhanced technical standard, it will just be part of the process to sort of check that technical standard. So whether you're building to 125 litres or 110 litres on the water efficiency, for example, it's not going to change the process. It just changes the requirements that you need to meet. So I don't see it particularly necessarily increasing fees. As I say, if there is a discussion around building control looking at space standards, so as far as I know at the moment there is no current space standards policy within Horsham, but if that was to come in at a later date and planners wanted us to enforce those space standards, then that would be a local agreement between us and the planning authority, the planning department. That wouldn't be a fee-based service on applicants. That would be a job that we're doing on behalf of the planners. So, at this stage, I don't see any major changes. Certainly not for the ones coming in October. Once we get to 2016 and the implications on checking allowable solutions and things like that, that may have an impact, and that's something we need to be aware of. So.
With the standards that are going into the local plans, if the local authorities don't get them into the local plan by October, have they then missed the boat? Do they get an opportunity to put them in at a later date?
No, I think Emma might be able. Emma's here from strategic planning. She may be answering that better than me. But as far as I'm aware, the local plan can be amended, but it has to go through a process. But Emma, maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, well, I'll come up actually because I was just going to follow on this mic.
No, just got object.
I've just got object, so sorry. Yeah, so I'm Emma from Strategic Planning, and just to follow on from what Steve was saying, in terms of the 5 main changes from the Housing Standards Review, in Horsham District we haven't got a minimum requirement for access, and so that will just go from what the new changes to Part M will be, so there isn't an additional requirement for access on top of that. In terms of water, as Steve said, we are in a water stress area, so in our policy, which is emerging through the Horsham District Planning Framework, it's not adopted yet, but it has been through examination. Policy 37 does ask for 110 litres of water per day, and that's based on the fact that we are a water stress area and the water resource management plans in the area support that. So once the plan's adopted, if it's adopted, that will be a policy which we'll be asking building control to support. In terms of the space standards, we've never had a space standard in Horsham, primarily because we are a predominantly rural district. Some of our neighbours have, for example, Crawley is a lot more of an urban area, so they have had space standards in the past. However, as space becomes more of a premium, particularly in Horsham town, this might be something we'll review in the future, but at the moment there isn't a minimum space standard in the district. And in terms of energy, as Steve said, that's been taken out of the remit of planning policy. However, what the Housing Standards Review does support, which aligns to the National Planning Policy Framework, is the use of decentralised energy and district heating systems. And again, in the emerging Horsham District Planning Framework, there is a policy which relates to district heating systems, but I think that's a discussion for another day. It just might be something for you to be aware of. And to answer the question about whether we can review policy in the future, again, that could be something we would look at, but for the time being, because the Horsham District Planning Framework is just emerging, it's unlikely that we do it in the short term. Okay? If there's any policy questions.
So if you were to want to introduce a space standard, what's the sort of likely process that's going to go through? How long would that take to go through the systems?
We could either do it through neighbourhood planning. There's the Horsham Blueprint, which is emerging, and that's specifically for Horsham Town. So we could look at adopting it through the Blueprint, or we could potentially consider writing an SPD, although that wouldn't be the most favoured option. It might be that it would come as part of the review of the plan, so in another 5 years' time. So there are mechanisms, but it's too early to say as yet.
Okay.
In terms of district plans, obviously locally, most of the district plans aren't yet in place. So can these be enforced if those district plans aren't in place?
In Horsham, we've got the core strategy and development and control policies document, and they already are in place. As I said, the HDPF has been through examination now, so it's literally just a case of waiting for the inspector's report to tell us if we can adopt it or not. In the surrounding districts, Crawley's at the same stage as us, a little bit further on, because they had their examination, I think, in February. And then Mid Sussex is a bit further behind, so you'd have to talk to those districts specifically.
But I think in principle, if the policy isn't in the local plan that's coming forward, it won't be put in.
Yeah.
You know, probably those planning authorities that are further behind may want to include some of these policies within their plans as they come forward. So in some respects, those that are further behind may have an opportunity to put some of this in quicker than actually like the likes of us that are actually quite a long way down the process and have got a fully sort of established plan that's just being finalised.
As I said, like Crawley did have space standards in the past, so it's highly likely that they would be adopting the national space standard, but again, it's local, so you'd speak to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was going to say, what is your thinking about this district heating system? It's just out of interest. Where I travelled to in Sweden, I thought it was a local district heating system. I now discovered it's probably the equivalent of Horsham District Council, and subsequently I understand the whole of Sweden, or a lot of Sweden, have got district heating systems. So what are we thinking about?
We would support them. The National Planning Policy Framework supports them also from a national level, but we're not sort of enforcing them. So if the viability stacks up and it's a more strategic scale development, then we think that would be more viable. We've also identified heat priority areas where there's a heat load. It's all technical and I don't understand the detail too much, but then where there's a compatibility between demand and supply, that would be identified as a heat priority area. So then we'd be looking to support district heating in those locations. But because the district itself is quite rural, we understand that district heating probably isn't the best solution for all settlements. It would really just be Horsham Town and the surroundings, and anything linking to Crawley, because again, that's an urban area.
Yes, sir.
The Part M and wheelchair housing, has Horsham got any views on, because I know in London they're talking about sort of 10%. Has Horsham got a view on how many wheelchair housing and how are you going to justify that?
Not in the emerging policy, we haven't, no. It might be something that comes in through RSLs and affordable housing, but nothing in the policy document, no.
So it may be in your, you're obviously Helen works for Tax and Will, so it may be that the implications for you would be that if you're looking to build wheelchair accessible housing, then the new category 3 within Part M is the standard that you should be specifying and designing to.
Yeah,
rather than sort of your own individual sort of.
We build it if planning requires us to build it.
Right. Yeah. So if you haven't got any tenants that you're building that that for, or required to build that for,
No.
then it's unlikely that you'll need to do
The
it.
situation we've got at the moment is we're building wheelchair units and then can't actually let them, so we have to rip out the wheelchair bits and make it back to general need. So obviously we don't want to have to build wheelchair units if we don't have to, but honestly,
Yeah.
we can't make them adaptable.
Yeah.
So
Those
I
are,
wonder
there's no,
rather than setting a number, whether they can justify that number.
Yeah, no, we haven't got a set number. Right.
okay. Any more questions? No? Okay. Right, well, thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Emma, for that update as well. You know, I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards, or feel free to mingle outside when the tea and coffee's still around, is it?
I don't know actually, it was soft, but we might have to do it well.
It might still be around if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.